So while Americans have a generally favorable image of Israel and want it to exist and be secure, they are not insisting that we back it no matter what. That is pretty much what our policy is, which raises the obvious question: what explains the special relationship if there is no strategic or moral imperative for it, and if most Americans do not favor it? Our answer is that America's unconditional support for Israel is due largely to the political influence of the various groups in the lobby. Now, what exactly do we mean when we talk about the Israel lobby? We argue that it's a loose coalition of individuals and groups who work openly to influence U.S. foreign policy in a pro-Israel direction. It is not a centralized organization, and the groups in the lobby do not agree on every issue. It includes organizations like AIPAC, that's the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, the ADL, the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations, the Zionist Organization of America, and Christians United for Israel, just to name a few. It also includes think tanks like the Washington Institute for Near East Policy and the American Enterprise Institution, and publications like the New York Sun, the New Republic, and the Weekly Standard. This is certainly a broad definition, but most special interest groups in the United States have different components. The environmental movement, for example, is not just Greenpeace or the Sierra Club. It also includes research groups, sympathetic local organizations, academics, and journalists, just like the pro-Israel movement does. It is certainly not a cabal or a conspiracy that controls U.S. foreign policy. Rather, it is just a powerful interest group like the NRA, the Farm Lobby, the Cuban Lobby, or the American Association of Retired People. And it operates the same way that those other interest groups do. Its actions, in short, are as American as apple pie. Very importantly, the lobby is not synonymous with Jewish Americans. Surveys suggest that about a third of American Jews do not care much about Israel. Others do not support the lobby's positions, and some groups that work on Israel's behalf, such as the so-called Christian Zionists, are not Jewish. In short, the lobby is defined by its political agenda, not by ethnicity or religion. The lobby also does not include individuals who simply have a favorable attitude toward Israel. Rather, one has to actively work to try to shape U.S. policy in a pro-Israel direction. Obviously, some groups and individuals are more active and more influential than others. How does the lobby work? In the United States, small groups with a focused agenda often wield disproportionate influence because they usually care much about a single issue does the population at large. Politicians will therefore be strongly inclined to support well-organized interest groups, think the NRA, because they care so much about the issue at hand, while not having to worry much about losing everyone else's vote. Like other interest groups, the Israel lobby works in two main ways. First, it exerts influence inside the Beltway by getting sympathetic persons elected to office or appointed to key positions, and by giving politicians and policymakers clear incentives to embrace positions that the lobby favors. Organizations like AIPAC work 24/7 to convince politicians to support their positions. AIPAC's annual budget is estimated to be about $50 million. And it is very active on Capitol Hill, helping draft legislation, providing talking points, and writing letters for congressmen to sign. It is a highly professional organization with an energetic grassroots base. AIPAC, despite the PAC at the end of the word AIPAC, is not a political action committee or PAC, which means that it doesn't give money directly to politicians. But it does help steer campaign contributions from individuals and pro-Israel political action committees. Over the past 30 years, AIPAC and other pro-Israel groups have helped drive a number of prominent politicians from office, including Paul Finley, Pete McCloskey, Charles Percy, Cynthia McKinney, Roger Jepson, and Lincoln Jaffe. The lobby does not win every time, of course, but every congressman and presidential candidate knows that you are playing with fire if you question U.S. support for Israel. The second strategy that the lobby employs is to try to shape public discourse and perceptions so that Israel is viewed favorably by most Americans. Mainstream media tend to be pro-Israel, especially in their editorial commentary and with their op-ed columnists and pundits. Compared with Europe and even Israel itself, there is a much narrower range of views here in the United States. If you look at pundits in the United States, for example, there is simply no equivalent of Robert Fisk or Patrick Steele in Britain, or of Akiva Elder, Bradley Burston, Gideon Levy, or Amira Haas, all of whom write in Israel. My point is not that critics are always right and pro-Israel pundits are always wrong. The point is that voices like those of Fisk or Amira Haas or Gideon Levy are absent from the mainstream media in the United States. Even so, watchdog groups in the lobby like the ADL and Camera monitor media coverage and organize boycotts and demonstrations against news agencies that publish anything critical of Israel. And groups like Campus Watch monitor activities on campuses and put pressure on universities. So when Jimmy Carter published his book, Palestine Peace, Not Apartheid, the ADL and Camera took out ads in major newspapers that included the publisher's phone number and invited readers to call in and protest. And the Jewish newspaper Forward recently reported that CNN was coming under unprecedented attack for its three-part series comparing Jewish, Muslim, and Christian fundamentalists, and that the Conference of Presidents was urging member organizations to take up the issue with companies that bought advertising slots for the program. Thus, it is not surprising that Jeff Cullen, a former senior producer at MSNBC, reports that, quote, "In my years in and around TV news, I never encountered a topic that caused more anxiety and self-censorship among mainstream journalists than Israel-Palestine. I was approached repeatedly over the years by reporters who'd been assigned to the Middle East who sought me out to tell me of fears there among U.S. journalists of sending accurate, even understated dispatches back to New York/Washington, D.C. that reflected badly on Israel's treatment of the Palestinians. I met several network TV journalists with long experience in the Middle East who told me of fears about sending home news that cast Israel in a bad light. Correspondents learned that accuracy and even-handedness meant less to network higher-ups than avoiding conflict with organized Israel right or wrong lobbies.